I never thought my life would take such a dramatic turn. My name is Emma Thompson, and I'm a Wall Street investment analyst. I work from our cozy home in the suburbs of New York, analyzing numbers and market trends all day. But this story isn't about my career, it's about love, friendship, and the choices we make. I met Jack Miller at a friend's barbecue 3 years ago. He wasn't like the investment bankers and hedge fund managers I usually encountered. Jack owned a successful auto customization shop, and his passion for his work was infectious. He could talk for hours about engines and custom designs, his eyes lighting up with genuine enthusiasm. That's what drew me to him, his authenticity in a world where everything felt manufactured. We got married last year in a small ceremony by the Hudson River. It was perfect, just like our life together. Jack's business was thriving, and I was making a name for myself in financial analysis. We had our routines, morning coffee together, working in separate rooms of our house, and evening walks in our quiet neighborhood. Everything was perfect until Vicky Parker decided to make waves. I've known Vicky since high school. She's always been the queen bee of our social circle. Daughter of a real estate mogul, she lived in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. She threw the most extravagant parties and always knew the hottest spots in the city. I used to think her friendship was something special, something to be treasured. How wrong I was. The first sign of trouble came during one of Vicky's famous dinner parties. She had reserved a private room at 11 Madison Park, one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan. "Emma, darling." Vicky air-kissed my cheeks as Jack and I arrived. "And Jack." Her pause before his name was subtle but deliberate. I should have noticed it then. The room was stunning, with crystal chandeliers and views of Madison Square Park. But something felt off. As everyone started taking their seats, I realized there weren't enough chairs. "Oh dear," Vicky's voice dripped with false concern. "It seems we're one seat short." She turned to Jack with a practiced smile. "Would you mind terribly sitting at the bar? The cocktails are divine." I felt Jack stiffen beside me. I should have said something. I should have stood up for my husband. Instead, I watched silently as he walked to the bar, his back straight and proud. The dinner was torture. Vicky dominated the conversation, dropping names of celebrities and billionaires she'd met. She kept glancing at Jack at the bar, a slight smirk playing on her perfectly painted lips. My other friends, Sarah, Madison, and Ashley, laughed at her jokes and hung on her every word. But I couldn't focus on anything except Jack's solitary figure at the bar. The ride home was silent. Jack gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. "Emma," he finally said, his voice controlled. "Do you REA? Lisa, what happened tonight?" I stared at my hands in my lap. Vicky can be difficult sometimes. Difficult? He let out a humorless laugh. She deliberately humiliated me in front of everyone. "Maybe it was just a mistake with the reservation," I said weakly. "Stop making excuses for her," Jack's voice rose slightly. "This isn't about a reservation. This is about respect, for me, for us." Deep down, I knew he was right. But Vicky had been in my life for so long. She was there when I got my first heartbreak, when I landed my dream job, when I needed a shoulder to cry on. How could I just walk away? The next few weeks were tense. Vicky's social media posts became increasingly pointed. Pictures of her luxury vacations with captions about keeping standards high. Posts about how some people just don't understand class. Each one felt like a personal attack on Jack. But it wasn't just online. At every gathering, Vicky found ways to make Jack feel like an outsider. She'd talk about exclusive clubs he'd never been to, reference private schools he hadn't attended, discuss family connections he didn't have. And I just watched it happen. Until one evening, when Jack sat me down for a serious conversation. "Emma, we need to talk about Vicky," he said, his eyes tired but determined. "I know she's your friend, but what she's doing isn't friendship." I tried to interrupt, but he held up his hand. "Let me finish. I've been patient. I've tried to fit in with your crowd. But Vicky isn't just being snobbish, she's actively trying to drive a wedge between us." His words hit me hard because I knew they were true. "Have you ever wondered why?" he asked softly. I looked at him, confused. "Sarah told me something interesting today," he continued. "Apparently, before you met me, Vicky used to tell everyone she had feelings for you." My world stopped for a moment. Suddenly, so many things made sense. The way Vicky always wanted to be the center of my attention. How she'd sabotage my other friendships. Her intense dislike of Jack from the very beginning. I had no idea," I whispered. Jack took my hand. "I'm not telling you this to upset you. But you need to see what's really happening here." That night, I lay awake thinking about everything. About how I'd let Vicky's toxic behavior poison my marriage. About how I'd failed to stand up for the person I loved most. About how blind I'd been to Vicky's true nature. The next morning, I woke up with a clearer perspective. But Vicky wasn't done with us yet. She had one more power play up her sleeve. One that would change everything. I just didn't know it yet. As I sipped my morning coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from Vicky. "Dinner at Lou Bernardine next Friday. Private room. Black tie. Don't be late." It wasn't a request, it was a command. And like always, I found myself automatically planning what to wear. Jack watched me from across the quay. "Chin counter. Another dinner?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. I nodded, showing him the text. "You don't have to go," he said quietly. But we both knew I would. And we both knew he would come with me. Because that's what we did, we faced things together. Even when it hurt. Even when it meant walking into another one of Vicky's traps. I just didn't realize this trap would be different. This time, everything would change. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what we needed. The week leading up to the dinner was filled with tension. Vicky sent daily reminders about dress codes and arrival times. Each message felt like a tiny needle, pricking at my conscience. Jack remained supportive but distant. I could feel him preparing himself for another evening of subtle humiliation. But there was something different about him this time. A quiet confidence I hadn't noticed before. When Friday arrived, I spent hours getting ready. My navy blue Vera Wang dress felt like armor. Jack looked handsome in his tailored black suit. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. I nodded, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. Lou Bernardine was stunning, all modern elegance and sophistication. The maitre d' greeted us with unusual deference. I assumed it was because we were part of Vicky's party. I was wrong about that too. The private dining room was already full when we arrived. Vicky sat at the head of the table, holding court as usual. "Emma, darling," she called out. "You look nice." Her eyes slid past me to Jack, and her smile turned predatory. "Oh dear," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "It seems we have the same problem as last time." My heart sank as I looked around the room. Every seat was taken. Not a single empty chair in sight. "Jack," Vicky purred, "you don't mind sitting at the bar again, do you?" The room went silent. I opened my mouth to speak, but Jack stepped forward. "Actually, Vicky," he said calmly, "I do mind." And that's when everything changed. The manager appeared at Jack's signal, and my world tilted on its axis. "Mr. Miller," the manager said respectfully. "Is there a problem?" Vicky's smug smile faltered slightly. "No problem," Jack replied smoothly. "Just a slight misunderstanding about reservations." "In my restaurant," he added quietly. The silence in the room became deafening. I watched as Vicky's perfectly composed face crumbled. "Your restaurant," she stammered. Jack nodded, his expression neutral. "I acquired it last year. Been meaning to mention it." The manager turned to Vicky's group, his tone professional but firm. "I'll need to ask your party to relocate to the main dining room." Vicky's face turned an interesting shade of red. "This is ridiculous," she sputtered. "I made this reservation weeks ago." "And I own the restaurant," Jack replied simply. I stood there, frozen between shock and amazement. My husband, my supposedly common who spanned, owned one of New York's most prestigious restaurants. The same husband Vicky had been trying to humiliate for months. One by one, Vicky's guests stood up, awkwardly gathering their things. The atmosphere was thick with embarrassment and unspoken words. Sarah caught my eye as she passed, giving me a small, understanding smile. Finally, only Vicky remained, her knuckles white around her clutch bag. "You planned this," she accused, glaring at Jack. "No, Vicky," he replied calmly. "You did." She turned to me then, her eyes blazing. "Emma, are you really going to let him do this to me?" For the first time, I saw Vicky clearly. Saw the manipulation behind every smile. The cruelty behind every friendly gesture. The possessiveness behind every show of concern. "Yes," I said firmly. "I am." Vicky's face contorted with rage. "After everything I've done for you?" "You mean after everything you've done to me," I corrected. "To us," I added, reaching for Jack's hand. Vicky stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. "You're making a huge mistake," she hissed. "No," I replied. "My only mistake was not seeing you for what you are sooner." She stormed out, her heels clicking angrily against the marble floor. The room felt lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had lifted. I turned to Jack, questions bubbling up. "Why didn't you tell me about the restaurant?" He smiled softly. "I wanted to see how things played out naturally. But tonight, I decided enough was enough." I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "I'm so sorry, Jack. For everything." He pulled me close, kissing my forehead. "Don't be sorry. Be free." And I was. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free from Vicky's manipulation. Free from the constant pressure to maintain appearances. Free to just be myself, with the man I loved. The next few days were a whirlwind of messages and calls. Some friends distanced themselves, clearly choosing Vicky's side. Others reached out with support and their own stories of Vicky's manipulation. Sarah called to confess she'd always felt uncomfortable with how Vicky treated Jack. "I should have said something," she admitted. "We all should have," I replied. Madison and Ashley came over for coffee. Without Vicky's influence, they were different people. Warmer, funnier, more genuine. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. No pretense, no competition, just friendship. Jack watched these changes with quiet satisfaction. "You're happier," he observed one evening. We were sitting on our patio, watching the sunset. "I am," I agreed. "I feel like I can breathe again." He squeezed my hand. "That's all I ever wanted for you." I looked at him, this amazing man who had stood by me. Who had fought for us in his own quiet way. Who had shown me what real love looked like. "How did you know?" I asked. "About the restaurant, about timing it all?" He smiled. "I didn't. I just knew something had to change. And Vicky gave us the perfect opportunity." I leaned against him, feeling grateful and humbled. "You know she's not done with us," I said softly. "Probably not," he agreed. "But we're done with her." And we were. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than ever. Jack was already in the kitchen, making coffee. Our morning routine hadn't changed. But everything else had. I had changed. My phone buzzed with a text from Vicky. I deleted it without reading it. Some chapters need to stay closed. Some friendships aren't meant to last. And some loves are worth fighting for. As I joined Jack for our morning coffee, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of our story. The real story. Without pretense, without toxic friendships. Just us, being true to ourselves and each other. And that was more than enough. That was everything. The autumn breeze carried the scent of change. Our neighborhood was transforming, leaves turning golden and red. Just like our life was transforming, becoming richer and more authentic. I watched as Jack worked in his garage on weekends. No longer hiding his passion for cars behind a veneer of sophistication. I stopped pretending to understand wine vintages and designer labels. Instead, I learned about engine types and custom paint jobs. We found our own rhythm, our own style. And it was beautiful in its simplicity. Sometimes, the best revenge is living well. And we were living better than ever. Free from the shadows of toxic friendships. Free to be ourselves, completely and unapologetically. That's what real love does, it sets you free. And in that freedom, we found our strength. Together. But life has a way of testing our resolve. 3 months after the Lou Bernardine incident, Vicky made her move. It started with whispers in our social circle. Rumors about Jack's business practices. Insinuations about how he really acquired the restaurant. I was in our home office when Sarah called, her voice nervous. "Emma, have you seen the article?" My stomach dropped. "What article?" "Page 6. It's about Jack." I quickly pulled up the gossip column on my screen. There it was, a thinly veiled hit piece. Anonymous sources questioning Jack's success. Suggesting improper business dealings. Hinting at connections with unsavory characters. I knew Vicky's handiwork when I saw it. Jack took it in stride when I showed him. "Let them talk," he said, kissing my forehead. "The truth has a way of coming out." But the rumors persisted. Clients started asking questions at his auto shop. Reservations at Lou Bernardine mysteriously canceled. Even my colleagues at work seemed to look at me differently. One evening, I found Jack in his study, reviewing documents. "We need to fight back," I said firmly. He looked up, his eyes tired but determined. "I was wondering when you'd say that." He pulled out a thick folder from his SK. "Remember when I said the truth would come out?" Inside were documents, photographs, and emails. all meticulously organized and dated. Evidence of Vicky's own questionable dealings. Her father's company's tax evasion. Her involvement in insider trading schemes. "How long have you had this?" I whispered. "Since before we met," he replied. It's amazing what people say around a common mechanic. I stared at him in amazement. "You never used it." "I never needed to," he shrugged. "Until now." The next day, we met with a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but Catherine Martinez, the best in New York. She reviewed the evidence with professional interest. "This is quite something," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Enough to bury her?" I asked. Catherine smiled. "Enough to make her wish she'd never heard of you. We didn't want to destroy Vicky. We just wanted her to stop." The cease and desist letter went out that afternoon, along with copies of select documents. The message was clear: back off, or else. Vicky's response came within hours. A frantic call to my cell phone. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. And another. Finally, a text: "We need to talk. Please." I showed it to Jack. "Your call," he said softly. I thought about all the years of manipulation. The subtle put-downs, the controlled narratives. The way she tried to destroy what mattered most to me. "No," I replied. "We don't need to talk." I blocked her number. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. The rumors stopped as suddenly as they'd started. Vicky disappeared from the social scene. Her father's company announced an internal audit. Life began to settle into a new normal. Our friends, the real ones, stood by us. Sarah became a regular at our Sunday brunches. Madison and Ashley showed up for game nights. No designer labels, no pretense. Just genuine laughter and real conversations. Jack's business flourished more than ever. Turns out, authenticity attracts its own kind. Lou Bernardine's reputation remained untarnished. If anything, the controversy made it more popular. One evening, as we sat on our patio, Jack turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "Miss what?" "The old life. The glamour. The social status." I looked at our simple backyard. The herb garden I'd started. The half-finished car project in the garage. The wine glasses from Target on the table. "No," I said honestly. "I don't miss any of it." He smiled, understanding in his eyes. "Me neither." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. This was our victory. Not in destroying Vicky. Not in proving ourselves to others. But in finding peace with who we were. Together. Months passed, seasons changed. We heard Vicky moved to London. A fresh start, someone said. Good for her, I thought, and meant it. Because I'd learned something important. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. And I was finally, completely indifferent to Vicky Parker. Jack and I celebrated our second anniversary. Not at Lou Bernardine or any fancy restaurant. But in our backyard, with close friends. Grilling burgers and drinking beer. Laughing at bad jokes and sharing stories. No pretenses, no hidden agendas. Just love, pure and simple. As I watched Jack chat with our friends, his hands greasy from fixing Madison's car earlier, his smile genuine and warm, I realized something profound. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed leads you to find what you really wanted all along. For me, it was this simple, authentic life, with a man who loved me enough to let me find my own way back to myself. And that's worth more than all the social status, all the designer labels, all the exclusive parties in the world. Because at the end of the day, love isn't about who you impress. It's about who stands beside you when the masks come off and the real world steps in. It's about finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and loves you anyway. That's what Jack did for me. And that's what I'll spend the rest of my life doing for him. Because sometimes, the best things in life aren't the ones that shine the brightest, but the ones that burn the longest. Steady and true. Just like us. End.